I was born in Vientiane, Laos in 1970 during the American Secret War. Over a period of 9 years, the US dropped 2.5 million tons of cluster bombs on my country, making Laos the most heavily bombed country in history. When I was growing up, we lived in a house on stilts in the village where my mom was a teacher. Our village was beautiful, with trees full of mangoes, papayas, and bananas. During the monsoon, the village would flood and people would have to get around in boats, making it a water village. When I didn't have to take care of my brother, I loved to roam around the village, sneak under fences, and explore. I wasn't afraid of anything except for snakes. My dad lived and worked in Vientiane, the capital city, and every couple of weeks he would come home, bring us food and money, and then had to return to his job in the city. We lived in a community where kindness was our strength. People took care of each other and watched each other's kids. We even had 2 young women from another village living in our tiny house with us so they could go to the school where my mom taught. In 1975, the communists took over and tightened security along the borders so no one could leave. What was once a peaceful village became a place where neighbors turned on each other. My mom was pregnant with my youngest brother, so we waited for him to be born before we made our attempt to escape. Finally, a perfect opportunity came in June of 1976. One day, my dad came from the city and told my mom that we would leave the next day. He told her to meet him at a certain spot in Vientiane the next morning. We had to make it look like we were just going on a short trip. So that night, my mom burned all our family photos. Early the next morning, she handed me an outfit that felt heavy and scratchy. I pouted as I put it on. I didn't realize that she had sewed gold necklaces into our seams, so we would have something to sell, just in case we needed money. In the city, we met our dad, who was selling his prized Land Rover Defender to pay for our trip. We were supposed to meet someone with a boat at 8 a.m., but the buyer was late, very late. Finally, around 11, he showed up, gave my dad $1,000, and took the Defender. My dad paid the smuggler, and she took us to a secret spot along the Mekong where a boat was waiting for us. Everyone knew that the Mekong could be deadly, with strong currents that could carry people away. None of us knew how to swim. But we reached the other shore where Thai villagers ran into the water and pulled us in. They told us that the people who tried to escape earlier that morning had been captured and shot. So, leaving late had actually saved our lives. We were sent to the Nong Khai refugee camp. In the refugee camp, people lived in rows of thatched houses, but my dad, he built us a house where we had privacy and we even had our own yard. He organized soccer games in the camp, and often we would have people over to share meals. My dad was a caretaker who worried often and suffered from severe ulcers and what we now know as manic depression. Most days, he made us feel safe and proud of him. He was a hero to us and our community with all his electrical and mechanical skills. It was those skills that saved us many times. But about a year after we arrived at the camp, my dad's episodes of depression came back. He stopped eating, he stopped talking, he stopped caring. He would just lie in bed. My mom took care of him like a nurse. She tried to bring him back, but soon he was too far gone. He had to be hospitalized outside of the refugee camp. My mom stayed with him day and night. She left us with our aunt and uncle and cousin who barely had enough of themselves. I had to take care of my brothers, and I was barely 7 years old. One day, my dad asked for me. He sent a nurse to fetch me from the camp. When I saw the man lying in the hospital bed, thin and exhausted like a skeleton, I knew that this was not my dad. This was not the man who could fix everything, who made my brothers and I laugh. He called me to come over to him, but I could barely make my feet move across the floor. I didn't know what to say or do because my heart told me that this couldn't be my dad. That was the last time I saw him. When he died a few days later, I couldn't even cry. To me, it felt like he had been gone for a very long time. Now, my mom was left with 3 little kids and no money. We were stuck in the camp with no hope. But my mom was strong, and she showed me how to accept life's challenges with grace. She taught me to work hard, to overcome adversity, and to always have faith. From that faith and hard work, blessings will come. Het Dee, Dai Dee. For us, one blessing came with the help of an uncle who was in the U.S. He worked for a man named Jack Fishback in Wichita, Kansas. And when my uncle told Jack our story, Jack decided to sponsor us and bring us to Kansas. He worked with the immigration office, and 7 months after my dad's passing, our paperwork was accepted. We were given less than 24 hours to be ready to board a bus to Bangkok for our flight to the US. We couldn't believe our luck. The bus ride took all day. When we arrived that evening, everyone got off the bus, gathered their belongings to enter the Bangkok refugee camp where we would spend the night. Eager to leave, the bus driver ended up running into one of the passengers. People were shouting and chasing after the bus to make him stop. Meanwhile, my mom, busy with my 2 little brothers and our belongings, suddenly realized I was not with them. The person the bus had run over was me. A cab driver put my unconscious body into his car. My mom climbed in, and as he was driving us to the nearest hospital, she cried to the heavens for my dad to save me. As she was praying, I woke up and screamed in pain. If she can scream like that, the driver told my mom, she is going to live. I suffered massive internal bleeding and had to have cranial surgery. It took 3 months for me to heal enough for us to make our journey to America, our new homeland. In Wichita, Jack hired our mom to work at his screen printing company. Because she didn't speak much English, I had to take care of my brothers at school and interpret for her when we got notices from school or other official papers or phone calls. In Kansas, especially in our small town, nobody looked like us. We constantly had to prove ourselves. The only time I felt like myself was when I drew and painted, so I turned to art whenever I could. Jack encouraged me and gave me all the art books I still have. After high school, I studied art at Wichita State for 2 years, but I was restless. When my best friend moved to Hawaii, I decided to follow her. My mom was upset. But Jack said to let me go, that I would find out what was important, and to give my creative instinct a chance. In Hawaii, where I had never been before, I finally felt at home. I finally felt like I could just be myself. I didn't have to worry about how I acted or looked because everyone else looked just like me. I landed a job as a makeup artist at a prestigious salon. The pay was great, but it was fun to use my artistic skills on people instead of just on paper. I would watch the talented creatives working there, designers, stylists, and photographers, and thought, I could do that. I learned a lot. It was in Hawaii that I also met my husband. When his company opened an office here in Portland, we moved here. In Oregon, I started my own photography business, and I also work as a design consultant, helping clients create beauty in their homes. Many people made our journey to the US possible. Jack, who helped so many refugees settle here, my dad and my mom, who gave up so much so that we could have a better life in America. To honor them, I want to give back as much as I can. So I volunteer with Refit Portland, and I support Legacies of War, one of my ways to Het Dee, Dai Dee. Now, our family is flourishing in America. My mom is retired and lives in her lovely house in Kansas with my middle brother, who's an engineer. And my youngest brother is a chef in New York City with 2 renowned Lao restaurants. Our son has an architecture degree, and our daughter just graduated from U of O last June. To honor my heritage, I keep an altar in my home, and before going to work on Monday, I place fresh fruits and flowers and water to honor my dad. I pray for him to be at peace and to let him know that we are thankful for all the sacrifice that he made in order for us to have a better life in America. Then I call my mom to hear her voice and to thank her too. Khop chai.